Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are playing as the High Elves against the Lizardmen on the excavation site map. And so I did want to try out just a little bit of dragon heavy composition, figuring I'll try to beat the dinos at their own game. And so as you can see already I do have 2 star dragons up in the sky. So obviously, with so much investment in the air contingent, you don't really have the money for that much of a ground force. And so, without further ado, let's kind of jump in and see how we built this up. For my lord, I decided to bring a prince. On the Star Dragon, of course, you can see he does have the Blade of Belcorhadris. Great little melee attack and armor AP damage buff, self buff. It's pretty powerful. I think it's pretty useful when you put him on a Star Dragon. He does have Stand Your Ground, of course, which is a good defense buff. And then Star Dragon Breath, which pretty potent, can do a lot of damage, and if my opponent, for example, brought Temple Guards or some of the higher end infantry like that, I could definitely melt them down with raw firepower, no pun intended. So alongside him is a Star Dragon, of course, also very powerful, basically identical, almost an identical stat line to the Prince. I think only 4 or less. Yeah, 4 less melee attack, melee defense, a little less HP, but honestly, they're almost identical, and both of them are very, very powerful. For the rest of my force, I do have a Mage of Life here with Regrowth and Earthblood, as well as Life Bloom, the Book of Hoeth, and the Starwood Staff, or whatever it is. I do believe it's the Starwood Staff. So trying to get the most out of my most healing possible. Obviously, with this sort of elite build, you really do need to keep your troops up and alive and healthy. So. And obviously, Star Dragons, if my opponent brought Stegodons or even Chameleon Skinks, he could whittle them down and kind of poke away at them over time, and I really want to be able to top them off when needed. For the rest of my composition, 2 units of Swordmasters of Hoeth make up the front line. They are backed by a single Phoenix Guard and Spearmen in the very back, and the Spearmen are basically just filler because I didn't have much points left over. You might be wondering why Swordmasters of Hoeth. Obviously, they're very susceptible if my opponent decided to bring, say, Mazdamundi with Banishment, or if Windblast, which he actually does have here. These guys are definitely very susceptible to that, but at the same time, these guys will absolutely trash any Saurus infantry they fight, including Temple Guard. They're just a very dominant force, and I figured these guys are kind of my best chance of holding. If I brought White Lions don't trade that well with Saurus warriors. They'll probably get smushed, so I figured I really need this contingent. The Phoenix Guard, of course, provides some additional anti-large. If my opponent went heavy with Carnosaurs, I could park my Star Dragons on top of these guys and use them as a defensive tool. Spearmen, just additional defense. 3 units of Archers are there to zone away enemy skirmishers, because, of course, Chameleon Skinks are a major nuisance and show up in almost every game. Otherwise, of course, Chiefs are pretty popular, so either way I was looking to zone those away, though my opponent did not bring either of those. He did bring some Skink Skirmishers, but just the vanilla variant. For my opponent's build, a pretty wide and pretty, I think, straightforward, though not gimmicky build. Oftentimes you'll see some builds that are just centered on spamming monsters or bring a whole bunch of Carnosaurs or something like that, but my opponent decided to go really wide here. A pretty classic build, I think. You have, of course, Krokgar here, who's running around. He's backed, I'm not entirely sure, he does have the Hand of the Gods. He seems to actually have all of his whole kit, so Krokgar, of course, very powerful melee lord. I'm not entirely sure if he'll actually outduel Star Dragon. He probably will, because he does have that bonus against large, but it's definitely going to be a tight fight. Alongside that, my opponent does have a Skink Priest of the Heavens here, who does have Windblast, Uranus Thunderbolt, as well as Curse of the Midnight Wind. One caveat, and this isn't, and obviously I still think Skink Priests are a really good choice, just because, of course, you get an extra charge of Cold Blood, you get great spells, of course, and you want spells. But one little caveat is that they don't have any way to improve their Winds of Magic reserves, which can be rather unfortunate. Now you can see I do try to get 2 Dragon Breaths off on the Bastillodon here. It definitely roasts it quite a bit, but it's not going to be anywhere near enough to put it down. And my opponent is basically just going to be able to shrug this damage off. He also does have Roiling Skies, which is actually a pretty crazy debuff to flyers. 25 seconds debuff to melee defense, and speed on dragons can actually be pretty massive. For the rest of this build, my opponent does have 2 Feral Bastillodons, as well as the Bastillodon with the Soul Engine, so this gives him, alongside the Windblast, some opportunity to pick away at high-value targets like Swordmasters. The Bastillodons, of course, can just plow through most High Elf infantry with impunity. The only real counter that I have is the Phoenix Guard, but even they're a little bit susceptible, and they'll have a hard time getting surround. For his front line, my opponent has a mix of Saurus warriors with shields, as well as some Skink cohorts and some Saurus spears, though these are the unshielded variant. Then, out on the far flank, my opponent does have some Feral Cold Ones, as well as some Skink Skirmishers, and of course the Skink Skirmishers are not the greatest of units. I personally don't think they're worth it. I think it's personally, my opponent would have been better off trying to cut some corners somewhere, perhaps drop your end Thunderbolt, or something like that, and try to get Chameleon Skinks instead, because they're just so much better. Regardless, you can see a Hand of the Gods does go down. It clocks my Prince there pretty heavily. Definitely shows how potent that spell can be. But regardless, we are still kind of running around and not really too concerned. Now my archers have gotten into position, and they're going to start chipping away rather quickly at these king skirmishers because they do have the range and damage output to do this. And of course, king skirmishers don't have missile resist; all they have is pitiful armor, so they're going to get torn up pretty quick. Anytime my opponent has engaged, you can see the swordmaster is completely demolishing these poor skinks. Over here, the phoenix guard is going to intercept the star spears. I'm pushing my spearmen, just trying to maximize my front line. My prince there does take a hit, but and I was intending to land him originally, but then seeing that the skinks had routed and were pushing on into the Star Warriors, I decided to pull away, and I get my Star Dragons back up into the sky for some additional passes. And you can see we are trying to take on the Feral Bastillodon here, but it's rather tanky, even against units like this Prince, and so definitely not going to be the easiest of targets. It just has a lot of HP, honestly, is the biggest problem if you're trying to take it down. And Earthblood does go down, though, trying to heal, and I was trying to get a regrowth here, and unfortunately, I accidentally end up casting regrowth on my mage. There's been, for some reason, it didn't go off on the Swordmasters, and it stayed on Q and cast on my mage to life, so I'm not entirely sure why that was. Definitely, I think, a bug or a glitch, so definitely rather unfortunate. Over here, though, you can see my opponent has plowed through the front. Unfortunately, he's getting kind of mashed up on these spears, which is a huge error. All these troops are being held up by a single crap unit of spears, but the Swordmasters, of course, are pushing through, even as my opponent's king skirmishers have routed off and fallen back a whole bunch. My backline is heavily compromised. You can see the archers trying to flee, as I do take my Star Dragons up into the sky to engage Krokgar, and with two of them, obviously he doesn't stand a chance. The Feral Bastillodon is not much help at all in this sort of fight, neither are the skinks, so really this is going to be 2-on-1 against Krokgar, and he is in for a world of hurt. I can see the Death Laser is coming, but the Death Laser I don't think is that potent. It's not going to do that much. You can see the archers here trying to take down the Skink Chief. My opponent is trying to use the Skink Chief to kind of shut me down over here. Anytime you can see the Phoenix Guard doing their very best to just hold their ground here. Uranus Thunderbolt does go down, and we're going to see how much damage it does. They're at about 5,400 HP here. They get hit, and you can see it does shave off about 1,200 HP on them, so definitely pretty potent. Definitely something I didn't notice originally. Over here, the Great Swordmasters got tied down on the Feral Bastillodon, but I decided to ignore that and push into this blob of melee. You can see my Mage of Life here trying to tie down the Bastillodon in melee, just buy me some time. Swordmaster, of course, not having the best time of it, but they are up to 100 kills, so perhaps I'm exaggerating a little bit there. While over here, Krokgar is in for a world of hurt against the two Star Dragons. You can see, despite his Sacred Spawning, despite all that, he's getting torn to shreds. The archers, as well, are destroying the Skink cohorts. Once again, there was a bit of a glitch. I think it might also be a problem with my mouse. Regardless, you can see the archers were doing a little bit of a shimmy there, but that was simply some micro issues. You can see a Wind Blast goes down and just wrecks the Phoenix Guard once again, though not as much as before. And they do still have their martial mastery, so they're sticking around, slaughtering these Star Spears who are going to rout. Of course, they're susceptible to fear and terror, so the Phoenix Guard who do cause fear are going to be able to rout these guys even more easily. While over here, the Skink Priest does rout, as does Krokgar, and I'm going to be able to chase him off with the help of the Prince. Over here, with the help of Earthblood, with the help of the Mage, and just the fact that two Swordmasters with little interference, my opponent's been focusing his magic on the Phoenix Guard. Just because of that, these Swordmasters have been able to kind of stick around, hold up all this infantry, and rake in obscene amounts of kills. You can see these guys are all sitting at over 100 kills. Even the Spearmen are getting some work done. Obviously, the Mage of Life not doing amazing, up to 1 kill, but she is just sticking around there, providing leadership and helping these guys stand firm in the face of some terrifying monstrosities. Look at this ugly mug with his club tail. I guess he does have a fancy little, I don't know, tea cozy or something, but nonetheless, pretty ugly mug. While over here, the Prince is chasing off those two units, and the Star Dragon sticks around to deal with the Bastillodon. The archers over here are being shut down by a Skink cohort, so my opponent definitely trying to shut things down. He did actually forget about his cold ones until the very last second, which perhaps a little fortunate for me. I don't think it would have made a grand difference, but nonetheless, unfortunate for him. And you can see over here, of course, the Star Dragon trashing the Feral Bastillodon as the archers unload on the Skinks. And of course, the Skinks don't trade that well with archers to begin with. Their stats are just not that good, and especially with this ranged fire, they're not going to last long, especially with the Dragon right there to potentially cause a terror rout. So at this point for my opponent, it's simply going to be an army losses game. You can see with still a healthy unit of Swordmasters on the field, a fairly healthy unit of Phoenix Guard, of course, some winds of magic and all that sort of stuff. Still able to keep my troops afloat. And my opponent's army is going to collapse. So definitely an interesting game. I definitely think that had my opponent either utilized his magic perhaps a little better, he might have been able to shut down my Swordmasters a little more effectively, perhaps shut down the Phoenix Guard. I think he definitely underestimated them, focused a little too much on the Prince and the Dragon and the Phoenix Guard. But nonetheless, I think it was a pretty good game. I definitely think this is a solid build. If you're willing to, if you're aware of your situational awareness, you're able to avoid spells as best you can. You can kind of snipe lords. It was a fun build, and I wouldn't say it's the most competitive necessarily, but I definitely think it can work. For my opponent, I do think this is a pretty solid build. I would just try to cram in some chameleon skinks here, unless obviously you want to do like a completely different build. But if you're just trying to do this sort of build, I definitely think about getting some chameleon skinks in there instead of the regular skink skirmishers, just because of how susceptible these guys are to shooting. Nonetheless, great game to my opponent here, to Jankinil. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below to keep up with additional content. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.